I will let you know that I am going to serve as chair of ESD/UDC for the meeting. And I now call to order the meeting of the Urban Development Corporation doing business as Empire State Development for June 23rd, 2016. Before we begin with the formal agenda, I want to take a moment to welcome Cesar Perales. Despite Cesar's youthful appearance, he has a very long and distinguished career, and I won't go through all of it, but to say Cesar has served the state of New York and the governor as Secretary of State till recently, Cesar starting with 2011, I believe. Now, you should know, we got to know Cesar over the years because state really ran these REDC competitions. As you know, the governor's been a big advocate for doing these regional competitions, and every year we would present in front of Cesar, who really led the whole strategic assessment team year in and year out. So he's intimately familiar with not only the Western New York region, where we spent a lot of time together, but with all of the state's strategic plans and folks throughout the state. So Cesar, in many ways, is extraordinarily qualified to be on the ESD board. It feels like he's been part of the ESD family for quite a while. And Cesar, thank you again for that big win in 2011 in Western New York.
It wasn't easy, Howard.
So we welcome you. And Heather McCarn is here, Chief of Staff representing Maria Vullo from DFS. Glad to have you here, Maria, and to all the directors and staff and special guests and to the public who may be here for comment. I will remind you that the public has the opportunity to comment on items on the agenda, and individuals can comment for a couple of minutes, and if you're representing a group, you can, comment for a couple of minutes times two. And as long as it's agenda related, okay? I'll ask the directors if anyone has any conflicted interests with any of the items on the agenda, and we'll remind you to recuse yourself during any of those items. Are there any board members with conflicts on the agenda? No. Okay, that's good. We have a format, Cesar, where we kind of go through the regions, different items that the regions have across different categories. So we tend to organize the meeting somewhat regionally, and rather than vote on each item, we wait till the items related to that region are presented, and then we typically kind of vote as a batch on the regional items. And directors are welcome to ask questions at any time during the meeting. Let's see. The first item on today's agenda is approval of the minutes of the May 19th directors meeting. Are there any questions, comments, additions, or deletions with respect to the minutes from the directors? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Thank you. Kathleen Mize is going to present an item relating to the corporation's annual financial reports. Kathleen.
Thank you and good morning. Before I begin some of the remarks that I will make regarding the audit report, because of the well-known investigation, increased scrutiny to the Buffalo Billion program that is administered through ESD, we've asked our partner in charge, Doug Zimmerman from our audit firm, EFPR, to make some comment regarding the increased assessment they've done of that program during this audit period. We thought it would be very informative for everyone to hear a little bit more of what was done with that particular program. So, Doug?
Thank you, Kathleen. We certainly do a standard risk assessment for the audit of the organization, looking at all the items that may lend us to believe that there was a particular area that should have received increased scrutiny. This year, obviously, with the press related to the Buffalo Billions, we felt that warranted increased review of the documentation. Typically, we would do a sampling process in various areas. We felt it was significant enough that for this year's audit, we actually looked at 100% of the transactions that the organization undertook with regards to the Buffalo Billions program during this current fiscal year, reviewing the various review and approval processes, whether or not all the documentation was intact, whether it was significant to support the transaction, whether or not the various reviews that had to be and approvals internally and externally that had to be in place were there. And we did not detect anything that deviated from what was required. There were no exceptions in any of the work that we conducted. We also had increased discussions internally with regards to various levels of management and those under them to make sure that they weren't aware of any specific issues. And again, we're happy to report back, and our opinions will substantiate that there were no issues that we detected with regards to that program that deviated from what was appropriate for the organization. I'd certainly be happy to answer anybody's follow-up questions, and I believe Kathleen is going to basically give a synopsis of the overall audit for the current fiscal year.
Any questions? Comments? Okay.
Just a quick one. You obviously don't look into the basis upon which awards were made. You just saw that the process met all the requirements.
Correct, yes.
Okay, Kathleen?
Okay, great. So the Public Authorities Law requires annual approval by the corporation's Board of Directors and certifications by the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer or other designated finance officer of certain financial reports. We'll refer to them as the reports. The reports consist of financial information set forth in the Consolidated Financial Statements and Independent Auditor's Report as prepared by the corporation's independent audit firm, EFPR Group, LLP. The audit report for the fiscal year ended March 31, 2016, contains an unmodified, clean opinion reflecting that the consolidated financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position, results of operations, and cash flows of the corporation and its subsidiaries. In addition, the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance, addressing whether control deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control exist, did not identify any deficiencies that would be considered to be material weaknesses. The audit firm was able to obtain reasonable assurance that the corporation's financial statements are free of material misstatement by performing tests of compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, including the corporation's investment guidelines and other matters. Non-compliance with any of these could have had a direct and material effect on the financial statements. The testing performed by EFPR Group LLP revealed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported. Included in the materials presented to you today is the complete audit report for the fiscal year ended March 31, 2016. It's worthy to note that the preparation of the audit report also included approximately 32% participation by an MWBE firm. The audit committee of the corporation reviewed and approves the audit report just this morning prior to this meeting. And Doug, his firm, and myself and my staff are available to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen. Any questions from the directors on the audit report? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you so much. Thank you, folks. Before I turn the program over to Chris Shefflin and Laura K. Brawl, I'm just gonna hit some of the highlights of the last month, just so you make sure you're getting your money's worth from your president. So there are a number of things that have happened in the last month that we stay very busy with as an organization. Right now in Washington, D.C., our Global New York team has been with the Lieutenant Governor at the Select USA Conference, and as you know, that's a international conference where the state is introduced to potential investors in New York State. So it's what we refer to as FDI, foreign direct investment. So I think they've had a good, basically trade show, so to speak, in the last few days from what we hear. ESD is actively working, Joe Chan and his entire team, on advancing key infrastructure initiatives that you're familiar with, including the Javits Center, Empire Station. Because those are open solicitations, I won't get into any more detail, but to say that we continue to advance those important infrastructure projects. I had the opportunity to participate with the governor recently in the opening of Cadillac's headquarters in New York State. This is here in New York City, in New York State. This is a long-time Detroit company that has moved to New York City to take advantage of the tremendous talent that we have in terms of design, marketing, and technology. So that's really in the sweet spot in many ways of New York City. I think Cadillac recognized that and moved their headquarters, for any of you who didn't know, is now based in New York City. We had the opportunity at ESD to participate in a statewide economic development conference in Cooperstown, where we network with industrial development agencies and other economic development organizations around the state, because economic development is a team sport. New York State can't do it alone, the IDAs can't do it alone, the cities can't do it alone. So together, we bring a great synergy and I think good effectiveness in economic development. I had the opportunity to participate in an additive manufacturing symposium at GE Global Research Headquarters recently. As you know, we're focused on advanced manufacturing, in many regions of the state have that as one of their key clusters, and that is really a emerging transformative industry and technology that plays to New York State's strengths as a real cluster industry for the state of New York. I had the opportunity to participate in Rochester recently at the City Age Conference. Rochester was identified, right, Hilda, as really emerging city with a fabulous future, leveraging its tremendous STEM degrees, its venture capital, its business startups, and we had the opportunity to talk about the way New York State Economic Development Agency here at ESD plays a role in advancing the Rochester economy. Our venture team participated recently in the Bright Buffalo event in Western New York. This was organized by the University of Buffalo, and this is really, a focus area for upstate where we're trying to attract more venture capital. And as you know, the governor supported in the budget $100 million venture capital fund that will really boost the funding of many upstate startup businesses. And an interesting statistic that you should know is that in New York State, more jobs were created by businesses that have been open for 1 year or less than were created by businesses that have been open for 10 to 20 years. So that gives you a sense of how important the innovation economy is and how important attracting venture capital is and how important business startup is to the health of New York State. So I think that was a fabulous investment from the governor to help seed business formation here in the state. Had the opportunity to visit the set of Marshall, the film about Thurgood Marshall that's being filmed almost exclusively in Buffalo, and a great example of how our film tax credit program that we administer here at ESD is really spurring a boom, frankly, in the film and television production industry in this state, including significant growth in upstate. We've seen in Buffalo Ninja Turtles recently and the filming of Thurgood Marshall, but it was fabulous to see. And recently we had the opportunity to cut a ribbon at New Lab at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. ESD, through its New York City Regional Economic Development Council, has prioritized the Brooklyn Navy Yard and has played an instrumental role in really revitalizing the Brooklyn Navy Yard over the years. I think we have participated in funding projects at that Navy Yard for now almost 5 years in a row. So Joe Taswell and his team have done a great job, and there's a shining success on how we help allocate state resources in a strategic way. Recently, the Transportation Development Corporation issued $2.4 billion of bonds that was run right here out of ESD, a great teamwork between Treasury, Finance, and Legal, to advance the LaGuardia Airport renovation, which, as you know, is a significant signature infrastructure project of the governor. And recently, we also issued $844 million of bonds to help American Airlines refinance their existing debt. So we're moving forward on infrastructure projects, on economic development projects across the state, and it has been a very busy year and month. With that, I'm going to introduce Chris and Laura. These are, two stars in the Buffalo community. And I'll start with Chris. Chris is both our regional director in Western New York now, and also serves as head of ESD subsidiary USA Niagara. So Chris wears a number of hats. He's been instrumental in the economic growth and revitalization of the Western New York region, and I think you all know that the focus of the Buffalo Billion has been both Niagara Falls and Buffalo and the surrounding area. So Chris really brings unique talent and a resume of great experience of accomplishment to the job, and we're glad to have Chris here. Laura heads UB's Regional Institute, which has been our partner in economic development in Western New York. The State University of New York only has one school of architecture and planning, and it's at Buffalo. And even more unique than that is the Regional Institute, which is a really professional organization that focuses on strategic planning, urban planning, and economic planning. So she and her team have been a great resource for Western New York. And beyond Western New York, you may recall we retained UBRI to help all of the upstate regions compete in the URI competition, and she and her team were able to provide metrics and show which industry clusters were maybe the most fertile ground for the upstate regions to develop their plans around, and was also to provide some best practices of economic development around the country. So Chris and Laura have been a great team and have been instrumental in the success and revitalization of Western New York. I want to also recognize Sam Hoyt, who's a member of our senior leadership team, who couldn't be here today because he's at a Public Bridge Authority meeting. As you know, Sam has alternately chaired that with a Canadian counterpart. But Sam has also been really an instrumental part of the Western New York revitalization. We could not have done it without Sam's tremendous support and leadership as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Laura.
Thank you, Howard. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and have a chance to share the Western New York story. I most certainly consider it a privilege to be in the role that I have within the corporation. Just quick formatting for this morning. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes on the history and geography and population of Western New York, and then Laura is going to handle some data that helps inform our strategy. And from there, I'm going to spend the remaining time on specific projects and initiatives that support our regional strategy, whether it's a CFA project or a Buffalo Billion project. With that, we'll get started. Thank you. So Western New York is home to approximately 1.4 million people and to New York State's second largest city in Buffalo. The region spans over 6,200 square miles and is a binational gateway within 500 miles of 40% of the North American population. We are rich in freshwater resources, being situated on two of the United States' 5 Great Lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. This slide just shows our geography by region. We have 5 counties or 5 regions in Western New York. To the north, Niagara County, where Niagara Falls is. To the south, what we refer to as the southern tier, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny counties. And the geographic center, Erie County, our largest and also the location of the city of Buffalo. I guess, 20 seconds of 200 years of history here. The Erie Canal opens in 1825, which connects the eastern seaboard to the Great Lakes and ultimately to the American West. About a decade later, the Buffalo's first railroad is built in 1836, which begins a transportation system that becomes the busiest railroad center in the United States, which results in the growth of a highly diverse, sophisticated, and factory-based manufacturing economy that lasts the balance of the 1800s. At the 1800s, end of the 1800s, and in 1900, Buffalo is the eighth largest city in the United States, and is becoming an iron and steel powerhouse, which continues into the 20th century, where our region is important in the aircraft and auto manufacturing industries. Our region is home to some of the country's most incredible architecture, including masterpieces by Frank Lloyd Wright, H.H. Richardson, and Louis Sullivan, and we're fortunate to have a Frederick Law Olmsted Parkway system. Of course, Niagara Falls, a world-renowned global attraction and destination with millions of visitors per year. Just quickly by the numbers, a look at our population, labor force, and gross metropolitan product. That GMP picks up just the two metros, Buffalo and Niagara. So I'm going to pause here and let Laura take you through some interesting data points that inform the strategy that I'll get into.
Thanks, Chris. So just a little bit about the Regional Institute. So Howard introduced that we are a professional research group under the UB School of Architecture and Planning. We help people make great places, guide decision-making with good information, ensuring public input, and making complex data understandable and accessible. And in our region, we were lucky that our university president was the RADC co-chair and tapped us on the shoulder from the beginning of our strategic planning in 2011 at the outset. And then we've been honored to be on the team with McKinsey and Brookings for the local Buffalo Billion planning, and then to assist the Western New York Regional Office with implementation of the plan, and then to work with the upstate regions and URI. So we always start, plan, and evaluate with data, knowing that data comes in lots of different forms, quantitative and qualitative. So we'll talk a lot about the new Buffalo. So what does the data for the new Buffalo look like? So the best kind of indicator for catalytic, transformational change for a place is generational. It's baked into the demographic cake. So if we look at my own experience as a Western New Yorker, as a small sample of a bigger picture trend. So my father came from the Philippines. My mother, her parents were from Ireland and Poland. So they came to Buffalo in the 1960s from very diverse backgrounds, but it was for career opportunities in medicine, and they stayed in Buffalo. They had 9 kids, thus shifting the demographic of Irish, Polish, Filipinos in Buffalo drastically. So the 9 of us siblings, we came from a mindset that said, this was my generation. After you graduate, you move to bigger cities. You have more opportunities in other places. So when I graduated from college in '96, I moved to Boston. So when I moved back to Buffalo, I had a quality of life in Buffalo that you couldn't afford anywhere else. And in my generation, all but one of the 9 of us moved back to the new Buffalo. So the next generation, so those 9 had 28 kids. Now we're really shifting the demographic of Filipinos. So there was, this generational shift is now happening in Buffalo. Most of those 28 are in their 20s and 30s, but not one of them has the mentality that they have to get out of Buffalo at this point. They value the jobs, the housing, the neighborhoods, the architecture, the parks, the waterfront. They want to stay and raise their families, the next generation, in the new Buffalo. So in our office, we call it, jokingly, we call it the per capita hipster factor. So, and when you walk around Canal Side on the waterfront on a summer's day, our hipster quota is like shooting through the roof right now, so it's great. So my story is very typical of the positive trends that we're now seeing in this generational desire to stay in Buffalo, and it's a great shift for our region. So let's take a look back. At the beginning of our planning, we took a long, hard, and very honest look at ourselves. I think Howard describes us as the most diagnosed region in the country. That's quite possible. So what did we learn about ourselves from starting in 2011? We'll start with some of the challenges that we needed to address. We embarrassingly sprawled without growth for about 40 years. So between 1960 and 2000, our metro lost population, but more than doubled its developed footprint. So we spent even more on unsustainable infrastructure and disconnected people from access to jobs. We lost population over the years, especially young adults. And our aging population meant we had retirement cliffs that were looming. So especially in key industry sectors like manufacturing, where we knew we had more than 20,000 jobs that could be open in the next 10 years. So we had to ask ourselves, did we have enough people with the right skills to fill their shoes when they retire? Our economic ecosystem wasn't great for startups either. So we weren't growing new firms or seeing much venture capital in our region. We had a bit of an image problem. So people who had never been to Buffalo before thought of it as a snowy tundra where everyone ate chicken wings and lost every major sports team championship. So even though we had these great unique assets for visitors, our tourists weren't staying long enough or spending as much as they should be. So enough with the downers. Even with these challenges, we knew we had incomparable assets to build on. We've got affordable commercial and residential real estate, outstanding entertainment, arts and culture, world-class architecture, and a unique collection of significant historical and natural resources. We have 21 colleges and universities with more than 100,000 students, 9% of which are international students from all over the world. And we had some competitive advantages in certain sectors. So with over 67,000 jobs in the region, advanced manufacturing is the third largest employment sector, and it's growing, up nearly 1,000 jobs since 2009. And its average annual wage is more than $59,000 a year and growing. That's $17,000 more than the region's overall annual wage. So the sector is also highly tradable, and it benefits from our transportation corridors that Chris talked about. And the value of manufacturing exports in 2014 was $5.6 billion, which is up 3% since 2009. Healthcare and health and life sciences also represents a notable 11% of the economy, with jobs paying above the regional average. So this was the stage that was set for our strategies. We had significant challenges to address, but even bigger strengths to build on. And we had some guiding principles that are now reinforced through the statewide interconnecting strategy. So placemaking says that where we invest matters. To create accessible job centers, to build sustainable infrastructure and livable communities to attract a talented workforce. And workforce says that who we invest in matters. So targeted job training and education ensures that jobs in in-demand, high-paying, tradable sectors are filled in an equitable way. Tradable sectors are what we seek to invest in. So these are the industry sectors that are part of a global market, like manufacturing and energy. And investing in tradable sectors creates greater output and higher paying jobs. So finally, innovation is how we invest. So it's increasing those synergies between research and commercialization to drive the economy forward. So even the best plans can sit and collect dust on a shelf without great leadership. And in the early days of RADC, we had Howard Zemsky, now a statewide asset, and now we have Jeff Belt, a passionate business owner in manufacturing, and Satish Tripathi, the UB president, as our co-chairs. And then there was Chris Shefflin, making big things happen in Niagara Falls with USA Niagara, who expanded his portfolio to take on the regional director job. And we're lucky to have these people, because without their tireless efforts to implement, we wouldn't have great data to talk about or a great story to tell. So I'll turn it back over to Chris to talk to you about Western New York's strategies and the progress.
Thanks, Laura. Building upon all this research, our Regional Economic Development Council Strategic Plan, which wins the best plan in 2011, outlines 3 key economic enablers: workforce, entrepreneurship, and smart growth, and 7 industry sectors on which to build upon. But the most important outcome of the REDC plan, and one of the biggest funding sources, has been the Buffalo Billion. In January 2012, of course, Governor Cuomo makes a historic commitment to strategically invest $1 billion in the Buffalo area economy to create new jobs and spur large-scale private investment in increased economic activity. The billion builds upon the priorities that are most important to address Western New York's opportunities and challenges as laid out in our plan. The plan doubles down on our enablers and three of the 7 key industry sectors, all of which strengths and opportunities that Laura mentioned. Before I hop into specific examples of our strategy executed, I thought it would be helpful to spend a moment on kind of the operating threads that make up Western New York. So from left to right, you have the regional office, which is our core business, right? Loans and grants, Excelsior tax credits, the meat and potatoes of Empire State Development on a day-to-day basis. Of course, the regional council CFA process out of the Western New York office. The Buffalo Billion, certainly a large amount of investment and important to the strategy, the leader in the strategy, with maybe the other ones complementing at this point in time. And then subsidiary corporations, we have two. Erie Canal Harbor, which is focused primarily in the city of Buffalo and the waterfront acreage there, and USA Niagara up in Niagara Falls, as Howard mentioned earlier. The one point that's worth noting, especially for the directors, when we think about subsidiary corps, down here, for instance, Moynihan Station is a single place, a single project that's just massive in scale. In Western New York, our subsidiary corps are focused on multiple efforts and initiatives and projects that make up a series of ongoing work. So it's a little bit nuanced and different, but I thought it'd be worth noting that these are all the different operating threads that we put the lens of the strategy through on a project-by-project basis. With that, I'm going to hop right into smart growth. Smart growth in Western New York, our first enabler, means reinvesting in our urban core, investing in our village and town centers, building sustainable infrastructure, bringing former industrial lands back to productive use, and protecting and enhancing our waterfronts. This is all in an effort to reverse the sprawl that Laura said we were embarrassed about. Since 2011, we've seen a 21% increase in the acres of waterfront land protected. We've seen a 36% increase in the amount of brownfields remediated, and we've seen fewer commercial vacancies since 2011 for the first time in a long time. A specific example of smart growth would be one of our Buffalo Billion initiatives, the Better Buffalo Fund. It's one of our signature. It is our signature smart growth initiative. It's a $30 million competitive grant and revolving loan fund. This creates vibrant mixed-use, high-density commercial corridors. It increases housing and commercial activity near public transit, and we're doing this in about 25 neighborhoods throughout the city of Buffalo. We're about to complete the second of probably 3 rounds of the Better Buffalo Fund. We anticipate at the completion of this current round, we'll have about 30 projects throughout the city, or 35 projects throughout the city of Buffalo, with about 20 million of Buffalo Billion investment. That 20 million investment will leverage 215 million of private investment for about a 10-time lever. And we think it'll yield 500 residential units, new residential units in the city of Buffalo, and 250,000 square feet of new commercial space through these 25 neighborhoods. Moving from smart growth quickly to entrepreneurship, our entrepreneurship projects are helping to build an ecosystem of networks that facilitate knowledge exchange and attract venture capital. We're doing this through our innovation hotspots that have allowed for new and expanded programming and greater access to our 9 incubator facilities across the region. A couple of data points. In 2014, 9,000 DBAs were filed in our region, which is a 67% increase from just 2 years prior in 2012. And academic spending, research and development spending in the region is nearly $500 million, which bodes well for future technology transfer. Our largest entrepreneurial endeavor is 43 North, which is currently the world's largest business plan competition, aimed at becoming the catalyst in growing a Western New York innovation ecosystem with 3 key metrics and the measurements that we worked on with UB and McKinsey heading into the strategy. First, the amount of venture capital attracted to the region. We saw the dearth early on, so that's a measurement going forward. The ratio of births over deaths, so how many companies start and succeed in Buffalo versus don't succeed or don't stay in Buffalo, growing that ratio in the positive direction. And then the amount of intellectual property created and generated out of our region. So we've done 2 rounds of 43 North. We've had 21 winners. We take a 5% non-dilutive equity stake in those companies. They work in an incubator on the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. And just one quick example, last year's winner, ACV Auctions, is actually a smartphone application that creates a marketplace for a dealer-only automobile auction. So a slightly disruptive technology that's faster and less expensive, appealing to a larger marketplace. In the traditional way, if you were an auto dealer, you would put your cars on a flatbed, send them to one auction, hope it's sold. If it didn't, you would incur those costs and then ship it back and then wait for the next auction. This enables a seller to enter a marketplace instantly with a much larger audience without having to incur really any costs. And so this group is actually up to 15 employees in Buffalo in about a year's time. They're in a venture capital raise, which will probably yield the most VC for one of any of the 20 winners to date. Moving from entrepreneurship to tourism is our first industry to talk about. Our council's tourism projects through the CFA enhance the rich tapestry of tourism offerings in our region, from arts and culture to historic sites to recreation, in order to draw visitors from around the world to stay longer and spend more in our region. One example would be the Flight of Five project in Lockport, which is restoring a piece of the historic Erie Canal, which I talked about earlier, and supporting tourism-related businesses in the downtown. It's expected to be completed next year and draw 230 visitors annually. Pivoting to tourism as it relates to the Buffalo Billion, which is something I've been really focused on. A couple things. I talked about extending stay and increasing spend, which are very easy to talk about, very difficult to implement, take a long period of time. But we're doing some really big things in this area. One, the governor has committed $65 million to reconnect the city to its magnificent waterfront. 3 miles of the downtown core, which for 60 or 70 years, multiple generations, had been cut off from the city and vice versa to its waterfront. So we're in the process of reconnecting the city to its waterfront, which is our greatest strategic asset from not only a tourism perspective, but just from a quality of life perspective. And then to how do you extend stay and increase spend? What are some of the things we're doing? Right now we're investing funds into the upgrading or creation of 800 new hotel rooms for a total investment on the mostly private side of about $100 million. If you can imagine a place that attracts 8 or 9 million visitors a year, it is this year that for the first time in our history that a Hyatt, a Hilton, and a Marriott product of what they would characterize as upscale quality, Hyatt Place, Hilton Garden, Doubletree by Hilton, Courtyard by Marriott, is actually going to be built in the city of Niagara Falls. It's pretty incredible that we've come this far, or taken this long to get this far. Outdoor recreation, largest segment of the tourism economy. It's a $650 billion industry, which probably makes it larger than the automotive or big pharma industries. Happens to play to our natural strengths along a really magnificent river gorge. And that's a stay extender, and we're working on some large four-season family-friendly urban attractions that happen primarily indoors, so that you create proper lodging, you come up with significant and unique and authentic ways to extend stay by attractions, and you connect the city to its greatest asset through the Robert Moses Parkway, now the Niagara Scenic Parkway, as named by the governor, I think about a week or so ago. So moving on from tourism to workforce, a couple of things just from a broad perspective. The council is helping to facilitate partnerships to expand the talent pool of local workers and right fit employees to the region's changing needs through curriculum alignment, skills development, and promotion of career opportunities. One signature initiative that I want to talk about this morning is the Western New York Workforce Training Center, which kind of combines all of our strategies. This is a $44 million Buffalo Billion initiative on Buffalo's east side. It's an innovative partnership that will be between academia and industry, featuring wraparound services and with a private sector management approach. Two main objectives to mention with regard to this training center. One, first of all, this is nothing like this really exists that we can find in this country today, and we're trying to do a couple of things with it. First, combat the looming retirement cliff that Laura talked about in the data. You have about 20,000 manufacturing and energy jobs that will be kind of retirement age eligible over the coming decade. And so how do you deal with that in the highest demand areas such as robotics and machining, welding, and quality assurance? And then the neighborhood that it sits is adjacent, that's adjacent to the center, has a poverty rate of about 35% and an unemployment rate of 18%, despite the fact that about 68% of that neighborhood has a high school diploma or some college. So there's a disconnect between jobs and education, and I think the siting of that center will hopefully overcome some of the barriers to entry that we've seen heretofore with regard to employment in Buffalo's east side neighborhoods. The center is currently in the final design stage. This year, we expect to hit construction Q4 of 16 and open the facility late 17, perhaps early 2018. Moving onto another sector, advanced manufacturing. Since 2011, the region has been moving an aggressive shared advanced manufacturing agenda forward, targeted at increasing jobs, wages, firms, and exports. Since 2010, the sector saw job growth after 2 decades of decline in Western New York. This incremental growth can be attributed to our ability to for our anchor manufacturers to actually innovate and grow, the attraction of new companies, manufacturing companies to our region, and an increase in exports. I'll talk about a couple of Buffalo Billion initiatives around advanced manufacturing. Certainly construction is well underway at the Solar City Gigafactory, the largest solar panel factory of its kind. The facility is expected to be online next year and create nearly 5,000 jobs throughout New York State. One other thing that I would like to mention this morning, Buffalo Manufacturing Works is a member-based, state-of-the-art facility in downtown Buffalo, helping to create an ecosystem to help local manufacturers identify, test, and implement technologies in order to create a competitive advantage for their products and stimulate innovation and growth for the region's manufacturing sector. To date, Buffalo Manufacturing Works, which is about a $44 million Buffalo Billion initiative, has been working with 50 companies. One quick example, Moog is a $2.5 billion publicly traded company primarily in the aerospace industry in Western New York. Their main product is actuators, so actuators are the parts that make a plane or a shuttle or a rocket move and actually control that movement. The challenge there is to automate the inspection of multiple dozens of critical surfaces that will increase throughput, efficiency, and performance. So they're using robotics and sensors and software that will ultimately be a human-friendly solution to automate what has been heretofore kind of a human activity. And the work, and Howard mentioned it earlier, the transition of manufacturing to the additive process or 3D printing as a baseline is a main focus of Buffalo Manufacturing Works, where their motto is really innovate or die as an industry. Moving from manufacturing to our final cluster, we had tourism, manufacturing, and now health life sciences. Just some background. All the kind of the center point of our health life sciences on the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus in downtown Buffalo. Just some kind of order of magnitude growth. In 2002, there were 7,000 employees on the campus. Today, there are 17,000. Investment at that time was about $220 million. Today, it's a cumulative $1.4 billion. And I think the square footage has doubled roughly from 4.5 million square feet on the campus to 9 million square feet. One project happening on the campus today, the University of Buffalo is building a new $375 million School of Medicine, which will house 2,000 students, faculty, and staff. It's the largest of its kind in the country being built today. And so that is a backdrop to our kind of the health life sciences momentum. I'll just quickly mention our efforts to co-locate clinical and research and development functions, fostering greater collaboration, can be seen in our Buffalo Billion investments. We have a total of $180 million of the billion invested in AMRI, the Buffalo Institute for Genomics, IBM, and Phoenix, which will foster growth and investment and collaboration in pharmaceutical development, discoveries in molecular research and genomics, oncology research, and with IBM predictive analytics and big data. These projects are projected to bring 1,750 direct jobs to Western New York over the coming years. This slide just talks about working with our old and welcoming our new companies. We've had investments in the last couple of years with Rich Products and Delaware North, both Buffalo-born and based 100-year-old companies. We've seen Yahoo make about a $250 million investment up in Niagara County with a large data center that they've added to once or twice already. And then Bach USA is a really interesting story. They're one of the 56 startup New York companies in Western New York, and that number 56 I think is the largest in the state, and we're led in that area by the University of Buffalo. But Bach is a really fascinating story. They're building one of the few manufacturers of mobile devices in America today. They make what's called ruggedized laptops, which are in some cases waterproof, and they're making tablets as well. So just an example of some of the companies that we're working with in our region and continue to work with. This is just a summary slide of our CFA and regional office investment of a little over $356 million. 3/4 of the billion has been committed for a total investment over this recent time period, say 2011, of a direct investment of $1.1 billion. And then just as I start to wrap up here, with the support of the governor and through the state, We have a locally born and locally owned process and strategies that are working, and our numbers are beginning to prove out the strategy. I think from day one, as a region, we knew that reversing the decline of young people had to happen if we wanted to have a prosperous region. And we can see a turnaround today. This is a metric that, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago you're not going to see. Since 2010, our young population has grown by nearly 5.5%. And so of all the data that we've shared and that we look at on a constant basis, this is our favorite. And we're also proud to report that our jobs, wages, and firms are all headed in the right direction. And I think we're going to move to a quick video, because if you can't be in Buffalo, we want to try to capture the essence of it for you in 90 seconds or less. But our region's image is changing. This slide kind of reflects that we're being recognized for that nationally. So with that, bear with me for 10 seconds while we cue the video.
Get your tissues ready. All the Buffalo people will cry.
Okay, team, great job. That was awesome. And thank you very much. Any questions for Chris or Laura? Yes, Joyce.
Of course. Just one comment. I noticed most of your outdoor shots are in warm weather, except for the one with skis in it, with skiing in it. Just an observation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, what do you say about that?
well, I measure
Is that-
winter by the amount of trips my plow person makes to the house, and we had.
That should be in the performance metrics.
Yeah, we had 300 days of without snow this past year, and my plowman worked, so he won the hedge on it. But I think you have to embrace four seasons, and I think part of like our outdoor recreation approach in Niagara Falls, for instance, is about include snowshoeing and cross country skiing, and I think getting outdoors is okay, and certainly skiing in our southern tier and down in Ellicottville, where it's actually become a four-season resort. Started as a ski place, but I'm going to be there this weekend actually. And so I think, we have to embrace who we are. We're a big hockey town, right on the Canadian border, and I think certainly Buffalo's pretty in the summer, and it makes for good video. But I don't think as a region that people are feeling bad about four seasons.
And now we ice skate on the down at Canal Side. You see, our summer in Buffalo starts the exact same time your summers in New York City start, with the summer solstice. And your summers down here will end September 20th. Our summer will end next Tuesday. So, when the leaves fall and other things. No, I'm just kidding. Buffalo has beautiful weather most all the time. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Actually, I had a couple of questions that were serious questions. One was, my understanding is that in the past few decades, there have been problems connecting Buffalo to the rest of the state. And that it would seem to me that improved transportation statewide would significantly aid Buffalo. Is that an accurate observation?
I mean, I think probably yes. I mean, we're probably the only city in the state that has two train stations because of how the tracks lie out, and I think.
New York does also.
Yeah, New York, well, of course, its own.
Same
I would
problem.
keep
For our
that, different order of magnitude for us in Western New York. But I think having a collective look at transit is a place that we are. I think a lot of our Better Buffalo Fund investments are around transit-oriented development, so we're trying to extend and increase ridership there, not only to the medical campus, but to employment centers throughout the region. So I think there's serious conversation around extension of mass transit in the region, but also kind of throughout the state, getting from west to east.
A lot of sorry.
Well, you travel from Buffalo to New York all the time. What time do you get up in the morning?
3:30. Truth be told.
I can
Yeah,
see where
no,
this
there's a
might
lot
be a
of errors.
detriment to doing business.
No, I mean, Buffalo has two airports that have had a lot of investment in them lately, in relatively recent years, and has fabulous air service. So, we have, for a long time, we had a problem with air fares, but now with, JetBlue embraced Buffalo and Southwest embraced Buffalo, and Buffalo has really extensive air service, and Niagara Falls has also a relatively new terminal for more secondary and tertiary carriers, but still, the airports are big business for Western New York. Almost half of our passengers come from Southern Ontario, so we're an alternative to the Toronto airport, which is much more expensive generally and much busier. You have to show up, hours in advance, and in Buffalo, it's, let's say, a more straightforward, easier experience. So we have a light rail system in Buffalo and West New York. It runs about 6 miles from the waterfront, the foot of Main Street, up to UB South Campus, and the NFTA has been actively working on an alternatives analysis to extend service out to UB North Campus and to Amherst, which is our most populous suburb. We're in a rail car rebuild program, so we've gotten a lot of new rail cars replacing the rail cars from the 1980s. And we are focused on transit-oriented development. So there is a lot going on and a lot of investments. And there's also a project in Buffalo called Car Sharing Main Street, where we took cars off of Main Street downtown when we put in the light rail in the 80s, and we're putting cars back on Main Street, and they're sharing the roads with the light rail. So that's been a big initiative as well.
Yes, you mentioned, Chris, you mentioned that there were 9 incubators in the Western New York region. And I was just wondering what kind of services they provide and what kind of follow-up support, if any, there is for companies that are using the incubators and being developed there.
So Tom Murdoch, I think, runs our Western New York division hotspots. I think I would have to get into the details a little bit about more on follow-up. I know it's mostly mentoring those companies and connecting them to other assets within the region as they're kind of geographically spread. But in terms of follow-up and results, I'd have to honestly come back to you on.
My understanding is one of the problems with incubators is that companies develop and do well in the incubator stage, but it's when they get to the next stage after that, that they run into problems, and that's where many of them fail.
And that's where I think our commitment to the venture capital is important, and that's where
Yeah.
the Startup New York program has been a real asset up in Western New York. As Chris says, I think 1/3 or more of the companies in Startup New York are Buffalo-based, so many of them come from the 43 North Business Plan competition, or they come from the incubators that you're referring to. So they graduate from incubators into Startup New York, and then we try to help connect them through the whole kind of ecosystem to venture capital.
In the New York Venture Capital Program, and maybe this is the question for you, the program that you just announced, is the state participating as an equity partner in that?
Yes, yep.
So
equity
that we
partner.
will reap any financial benefits from
Exactly.
firms that
Yeah, it's not
take
a,
off.
right, it's not a loan and grant program, it's or a
It's a
tax
real
credit program,
investment.
it's a real investment program. And we're typically investing side by side with other equity investors.
Right.
So it's not like the state is owning it entirely, but it's in the capital structure in an equity position like other investors.
Right, and that money, what happens to the profits from that, let's say, or is it too soon to be thinking about
Goes
that?
to, you didn't know, it goes to all the ESD directors.
Very good.
No, I'm sorry, it doesn't, just for the record, it does not. I don't want to read that in a newspaper anywhere tomorrow. It will go back to
It
the
goes back
venture.
into the,
yeah,
into
exactly.
the regional economy and into the
It'll go back
fund.
into, I think, the venture fund, and it will enable
Mhm.
a continued investment
Ah,
in,
okay.
venture capital investment.
One other thing that I was curious about, when you talk about things like connecting the city to the waterfront, the creation of advanced manufacturing jobs, changes in population, changes in demographics, et cetera. What kind of performance metrics do you use? And as directors, is there some way that we can access those performance metrics?
Sure.
So for the annual report, right, about capital stability, I think the way we do our annual report is not just based on the CFA Regional Council. We incorporate all of our metrics with regard to the billing. We kind of roll them up into that, so our reporting is kind of put out in the progress report every year, and we can certainly make that available to all the directors.
That would be, I think, tremendously helpful, and
And-
particularly in the Buffalo region because
Yeah.
so much focus is
Yeah,
there.
no.
Sure,
Quick
Cesar.
question. Yeah, very quick. You focused on Erie and Niagara. The REDC apparently has an interest in Jamestown. What do you guys think of Jamestown as, when we're talking about placemaking?
Well, we have an interest everywhere, of course, right, Secretary of State, north and south. The Jamestown is a wonderful, like, city on a river, the Chattacoin River, and has, unlike a lot of our other cities, been able to retain, even through tough times, some magnificent architecture and walkable neighborhoods. And so I think there's some momentum in that city around investment, and there's multiple foundations involved in investing millions of dollars in what is a relatively small county. So I think there's a real team effort happening down in Jamestown right now that I think we see from the county executive, the electeds, the foundations, and I think that there's some really beautiful old bones in that municipality that could create more density, more mixed income, residential base driven development, and so I think we're slightly bullish on Jamestown.
Laura agrees?
From an urban planning perspective, it's a sort of mini magical place that, if with some additional investment, would be catalytic, I think, for a place like that. It's a beautiful place with lots of potential, but just needs to sort of restore itself.
Mini magical place.
It's a mini magical place. I don't want to be too technical.
That's a technical
That's-
term.
I'm sold.
Disney's gonna be coming after.
Can we use that in our next New
Absolutely.
York State ads?
It's yours.
At some point, you and I ought to sit down and talk about downtown revitalization.
Sure.
The fact that you're playing an important role,
Yep.
and maybe at some point the board ought to know about it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that downtown revitalization initiative that was in the budget this year was really run by state, but championed, frankly, by Cesar and the governor, who I'd like to think built on some of the focus in Western New York that really was introduced in 2011 as placemaking and smart growth as really central to our economic development strategy, which, as you can see from the map that Laura put up, and Chris showing the sprawl that we had experienced for so many decades, and sort of reverse really our very conscious effort to reverse the impact of sprawl and focus on vitality and revitalization. all of these initiatives for West New York and really for upstate always have to look through the lens of young people because we lost such a disproportionate share of young people. So we really tended in Western New York to look through a lens of young people, not that we're, biased toward young people, but if you keep losing them, you don't really have any population growth potential. So it's great to see the kind of press Buffalo's getting and the kind of density and vitality and entrepreneurship that's happening in Buffalo. So,
Howard, I just have a quick question.
yeah.
So on the Buffalo housing market, I'm just picking up on your comment about young people. Say a college graduate comes to Buffalo, first job, what are the housing opportunities in terms of abundancy of housing, different neighborhoods, cost, and all of that?
I mean, I think broadly speaking, it's a pretty good situation all the way around. I mean, from a mixed income, even affordable housing at 50%, AMI, right, roughly. Rents, high 400s to 700, readily available.
I know you're all coming.
Not even one room in my apartment.
Actually, there's a lot of development.
That's per square foot, right?
No,
That's so funny.
yeah, I think, there's a lot of development around beyond that to $1.25 a square foot. But for the demographic that you're referring to, young population, remember you have a city built for roughly twice as many people from an infrastructure standpoint than reside in the urban core today. So new neighborhoods are emerging, which is kind of the beauty of what's happening. The west side of Buffalo, traditionally relatively stable and a more affluent, really pushing west several blocks. And so I think plenty of availability, super affordable, and all pretty high quality in terms of space.
Incredible housing stock.
Have all those old neighborhoods been maintained, or, is the housing stock more or less stable, or is it a lot of it really run down? I don't know how the city's been, because I know when you lost a lot of population, what happened to those neighborhoods?
It's a mix for sure, just like in any other urban environment. There's some neighborhoods that certainly are in distressed situations, but the housing stock, the basic housing stock is incredible, and our architecture is incredible. So that I think we have a baseline to work off of. That incomparable housing stock, really. So the opportunities are there.
And to follow up on Derek's question, is there much development of new housing, and do you work with HCR on developing affordable housing?
So the Better Buffalo Fund, we have 2 tracks in the Better Buffalo. I didn't get into the distinguishing factors, but we do transit-oriented development for all the reasons we've talked about, and we do a Main Street program with HCR. And some projects we don't even take through BBF because it's a more natural fit directly for HCR. So we're working very closely with the Albany and Buffalo staff for the HCR shop, and so very much focused on that.
For the first time in forever, our downtown housing is exploding. Residential downtown is exploding. Yeah, it's great.
And it's more adaptive reuse of historic buildings and historic tax credits have really, that policy that the state has really had a big impact on investment in Buffalo and other upstate regions. So, that 20% state historic tax credit coupled with a 20% federal historic tax credit, that provides the equity in essence for a lot of projects that otherwise wouldn't be able to get financed or happen. So it drives a lot of adaptive reuse of the historic buildings, which is a great asset. So it's sort of preserves the historic architecture and it repopulates the downtown area. So it's a great program.
So the state's housing programs meet your needs, in effect?
I think there's a nice complement between the investment we're making around housing, what's happening from what the market's doing on its own, and what HCR has. So I think we're covering like all demographic and kind of economic stratas with regard to housing. And like Laura said, I think the stock is really pretty solid.
And there isn't a section of Buffalo, north, south, east, or west that hasn't gone through some or a ton of revitalization and rehabilitation. So you've got some neighborhoods that have gone from dilapidated to incredibly renovated, and you've got some that are now in the early stages of starting that. The more we invest in downtown, whether it's the medical campus or other, the waterfront or other anchor institutions or important places, the more people want to live there, want to work there, and it all sort of has a synergy around investment in and around the center, and there's neighborhoods all in and around the center of Buffalo, and they're all experiencing some level of rehabilitation, which is great. Well, we wanted, I don't want to cut off the conversation, this is one of my favorite topics, but I think it's important to say, one of the reasons I asked Chris and Laura to take a little bit more time than our traditional regional presentation is because we as a state, as an agency, have invested so much time and money, and the governor has committed such extraordinary commitment and resources to Buffalo. And it's important for everyone here at this agency and anyone who's watching and anyone on the planet to understand the incredible role that Empire State Development played in the revitalization of this amazing place. It was only a handful of years ago that this community had almost no sense of optimism about the future. And it has changed so remarkably and so dramatically. You cannot understand it unless you've lived there, but it is should be and hopefully is a tremendous source of pride for ESD, for UBRI, for all of our partners, for the Regional Economic Development Council, for the governor, who's had made it, went way out on a political limb for Buffalo in terms of committing to an area that had a long history of one failed attempt of revitalization after another, but this kind of holistic, coordinated strategy and being empowered by the governor to really create a plan and to direct state resources to advance the plan has been, to me, the really big idea in economic development. This whole regionalization, coordination, strategic planning is a transformative way of doing economic development. I don't think there's any place that exemplifies that better than Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and Western New York. So I want to say that. Okay, before we proceed further to the other presentations, I'm going to ask Glendon to present a summary. Glenn?
Thank you, and good morning. The directors will be requested to consider a investment project totaling $17,440,000 in grants and a loan. The projects include 1 Buffalo Building Award, 7 Regional Council Awards, and 3 discretionary awards. The projects take place in Western New York, Mohawk Valley, Finger Lakes, Long Island, Central New York, and North Country regions. Will leverage over $79 million of additional investment, retain 450 jobs, and create 122 jobs in the state. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Glenn, thank you so much. We'll now move to the project section of the agenda, and as previously noted, project items will be voted on at the end of each regional presentation. Chris, you've got the floor again.
Thank you, Howard. This request is to approve a $2 million loan from the Buffalo Regional Innovation Cluster Fund, or the Better Buffalo Fund, to UH Lofts LLC. These funds will be used for a portion of the construction and remediation costs for the rehabilitation and reuse of former Buffalo Public Schools 63 into a mixed-income workforce rental apartments, which will be known as Lofts at University Heights. This is a $16 million project that includes the adaptive reuse of a former school, which has been vacant for over 9 years and rapidly deteriorating. The Lofts at University Heights will consist of approximately 44 1- and 2-bedroom mixed-income rental apartments with approximately 55 on-site parking spaces. 11% of the units will be handicapped accessible, and 4% of the units will be audio and sensory adapted. The project is in close proximity to transit for young professionals and moderate-income households accessing job and educational opportunities in downtown Buffalo, and the project is expected to be completed in the fall of 2017. Next, the directors are asked to approve a $340,000 EDF grant to be used for a portion of construction and renovation costs for Columbus McKinnon Corporation to construct new global headquarters. Columbus McKinnon is a global designer, manufacturer, and marketer of hoists, rigging tools, cranes, and actuators, and other material handling systems that service a range of commercial and industrial end users. This $6.7 million project will involve property acquisition and construction of a new 26,000 square foot facility and training, headquarters, building, and training facility, including the purchase of FF&E as well as machinery. The company could have relocated to an existing production facility in North Carolina, which is where many of the company's directors reside. In addition to this $340,000 capital grant request, the accepted ESD incentive offer to the company includes an Excelsior Jobs Program tax credit of up to $540,000.
Any questions or comments on either of these items from the directors? Are there any questions, any comments from the public on either of these two items? Is there a motion to approve both items? Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Barry, are you on the line?
I am. Good morning, Howard.
Good morning. Barry represents our Long Island region, and he has two items on the agenda. Barry?
Yes, good morning, directors. The directors are being asked to approve a $2,500,000 grant for Adelphi University's Clinical Education and Simulation Laboratory, which will train future Long Island nurses. The building is completed. This was a Regional Council Round 4 priority project aimed at significantly increasing the availability of trained healthcare workers to fill waiting nursing jobs in both New York City and Long Island. The Regional Council has identified the critical shortage of nursing professionals as one of our most critical challenges. The Regional Council heard from many hospitals that the lack of skilled nurses will only get worse in the future, and it has. Adelphi has a strong nursing program but lacks suitable space for classrooms and clinical teaching facilities. ESD's $2.5 million grant will reimburse the school based on their investment to build a 22,000 square foot teaching and training center at the university located in Garden City, Nassau County. The project cost was $15 million, and the building is complete. 8 new jobs have been committed, and 2 have already been added, but it should be noted this was not a project solely intended to create jobs at Adelphi, but rather to address the critical shortage of trained nursing professionals in the region. The second project I'm presenting is we're asking the directors to approve a $1 million grant for Stony Brook University and the SUNY Research Foundation for a Regional Council Round 3 project to equip a high-performance computing center. These funds were used to renovate space at Stony Brook University, to create an Institute for Advanced Computational Science, and also to buy and install high-speed computing equipment at Brookhaven National Laboratory. Stony Brook University is closely aligned with Brookhaven National Laboratory in terms of joint research and dual appointment of professors, and they're both are key globally respected academic and research institutions in the region. In addition, Stony Brook University manages Brookhaven National Labs through a contractual agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy. For these reasons, it made sense to allow part of the investment to be at Stony Brook and part to be at Brookhaven National Laboratories, a good example of how Long Island's research institutions collaborate. The high-performance equipment installed at Brookhaven National Labs includes a Linux cluster computer with capability in terms of speed and storage that far exceeds the computational capability of anything in the region. This computational capability is needed for research, to train IT engineers, and also for companies on Long Island who need the advanced computational capability for advanced manufacturing and biotechnology clusters. I would note that Stony Brook University President Samuel Stanley and Brookhaven National Lab Director Dune Gibb are both regional council members, and they recused themselves from all discussion and did not vote on the projects. 11 jobs have already been added, and the $5 million has been spent, and they are seeking our $1 million for reimbursement. I'll be happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, any questions from the directors on either of these items for Barry? Is there any comment from the public on either of these two items? Is there a motion to approve both?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barry. We have 3 Mohawk Valley Region items that will be presented by 3 project managers. Please note that the vote will be taken at the end of the presentation. Scott Lampkin is up, and he'll talk Nano Utica.
Thanks, Howard. The directors are being requested to approve a $5 million Empire State Economic Development Fund capital grant to Economic Development Growth Enterprises, or Mohawk Valley Edge, for site preparation work for a semiconductor fabrication plant. Mohawk Valley Edge was formed in 1996, is a not-for-profit corporation that provides business and economic development assistance in Oneida and Herkimer counties. Mohawk Valley Edge is the region's primary marketing organization and works with businesses that are considering expansion or relocation opportunities in upstate New York. Since 2006, Mohawk Valley Edge has led the transformation of the Marcy Nano Center site at the SUNY Polytechnic Institute, making infrastructure improvements in preparation of attracting a semiconductor firm. This 428-acre site is being redeveloped for semiconductor manufacturing and supportive nanotechnology uses. Mohawk Valley Edge has been working with SUNY Poly and Fort Schuyler Management Corporation, which has led to the commitment by AMS AG, which is a multinational semiconductor manufacturer headquartered in Austria, to locate its wafer fabrication facility at the Marcy Nano Center site. The project will continue site preparation activities necessary to support the construction of its wafer fabrication facility and support facilities for AMS AG. These activities include excavation and removal of approximately 390,000 cubic yards of unsuitable overburden material to allow the construction of the first of 3 development terraces that is smooth, level, and well-drained for the Marcy Nano Center site. The project will also include the rock cut for the FABC facility, with the excavated rock material being used to provide the finished floor elevation for the central utility building, or the CUB facility. Approximately 200,000 cubic yards of rock will be cut, processed, and deposited for the CUB facility. The total project cost is $6.375 million, and the project is substantially completed.
Okay, thank you. Glendon, you've got the next Mohawk Valley project?
Yes, thank you, Howard, and this is also related to the Marcy Nano Center development. The direct.
That a little closer to you.
Sorry. The directors will be requested to approve a $700,000 Regional Council Round 3 grant to Mohawk Valley Edge for the construction of a new crossing of the Erie Canal. In order to address critical sewer needs to support the development of the Marcy Nano Center site, a new sewer crossing is needed. The maximum capacity of the United County Interceptor is 8 million gallons per day, and the new crossing will add an additional 4 million gallons per day of wastewater capacity. The new crossing is vital for infrastructure needs, supporting regional economic development growth, and provides capacity to support 2 large or 3 mid-sized semiconductor plants at the proposed Marcy Nano Center site. Mohawk Valley Edge will construct the new sewer crossing, or Phase 2 of the United County Interceptor. Phase 1, which was completed which will be completed in September 2016, built a 93 linear feet, 42-inch interceptor that connects the main line that runs to the county sewer treatment plant in Utica. Phase 2 will replace the existing connection from the new line with twin 24-inch cast iron pipes encased in concrete. The new sewer crossing will convey all sanitary flow from the communities north of the canal, as well as the projected sanitary flow of the Marcy Nano Center site. Total project cost is $4.3 million, and project design is expected to be complete December of this year. Thank you.
Okay, Glenn, thanks so much. Simone, you've got the last item on the Mohawk Valley Griffiths Institute.
Thank you. The directors are requested to approve a $1.1 million Regional Council Round 3 capital grant to the Griffiths Local Development Corporation, or GLDC. The GLDC was created to stimulate development at the former Griffiths Local Air Force Base, which as of 1995 now operates as the Griffiths International Airport, housing the Griffiths Business and Technology Park. In 2012, GLDC sought to expand a building at the business park, which served as an incubator in developing novel and affordable command, communications, cyber, and intelligence C4I technologies. The GLDC envisioned the addition of a 20,000 square foot expansion to the building to provide needed office and lab space, which could be leased at market rates. In December 2013, GLDC applied under the Mohawk Valley Regional Council CFA, and ESD made the company an offer of assistance in March 2014. This expansion project is taking place in conjunction with several other construction upgrades at the Griffiths Business Technology Park, one of which will be presented later in the meeting under the non-discretionary schedule. GLDC has already identified the New York State Cyber Research Institute as a tenant for the space. The institute will collaborate with the United States Air Force Research Laboratory in Rome along with businesses, educational institutions, and not-for-profit entities. The project will total $5.9 million in costs and is expected to commence in the summer of 2016. Potential contractors will be selected through public notice in the State Contract Reporter, the Syracuse Business Exchange, and other local publications. The project is scheduled to be complete in February 2017.
Thanks, Simone. Okay, so we have 3 items. Are there any questions from directors on either of these 3 items? Is there any comment from the public on either of these 3 items? Is there a motion to approve all 3 items?
No.
Great. All in
Second.
favor? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, all. Let's see, where are we? Yada, yada. Okay. John Vanderloo, are you on the line with us?
Good morning, Commissioner Howard. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you. John is representing the North Country region, and he has the North Country Transformational Tourism Fund item. Take it away, John.
Good morning. The directors are asked to approve a grant of up to $3 million to increase a revolving loan fund to develop tourism facilities in the North Country region. The project is a priority project of the North Country Regional Economic Development Council Round 5 Awards. DANC, Development Authority of the North Country, is a public benefit corporation with a 13-member board of directors. DANC helps with technical assistance, planning, and financing for housing, tourism, and other economic development projects and programs throughout the North Country region. DANC requested ESD assistance to help finance its transformational tourism projects in underserved North Country communities. This revolving loan fund would not be possible without ESD assistance. The fund is available for new and existing business entities to apply for funding to develop tourism infrastructure, including lodging, restaurants, retail, recreation, arts, and cultural venues. This project will enhance the quality of life, provide affordable recreation, attract visitors, and attract additional private investment throughout the North Country region. That is it for that presentation, Howard. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, John, are there any questions from the directors for John on this item?
Once we
Yes.
approve revolving funds.
What's that?
Once a revolving fund of this nature is approved,
Yep.
do they ever come
I cannot
back?
hear the question, Howard.
I'll repeat it for you once I hear the whole question.
Okay, thank you.
Do we ever get a report back or asked how it is being employed?
Yeah, so the question is, can we occasionally get updates on the status of like the fund? So if the North Country gets approval initially for a revolving loan fund in support of tourism, can we keep track of, hey, how much money has it put out? What's the status of those projects? Has the money come back? Are we recycling those funds? So it's sort of like a status update of the loan fund.
Yes, Howard, we get that regularly as part of the quarterly reporting and requests for additional drawdowns from the fund. And that is regularly supplied quarterly or when they request funds, or when
Thank you.
Development Authority of North Country, known as DANC, requests the funds.
Okay,
And those are on file at ESD in New York City.
okay. There you go. So we can review them from time to time, or, how those funds
Of course,
are doing.
Howard, or provide them as they come in upon specific requests. But they regularly report
Yep.
on how many loans they
Right.
made, what the projects were for, and so on and so forth.
Okay,
And Howard,
Yep.
just to add, we actually play a role in actually approving the loan, so the applicant has to actually come to ESD regional offices.
Yep.
We review the loan application and we make decisions as to how much loans is actually awarded to individual grantees.
It's got to get past you, Glenn.
Yes.
There you go. And others.
Thank you, Glenn.
No problem, John.
All right. Any other questions? Any comments from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
First, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Jim Fail, who directs our Central New York region, has an item present on Infocon. Jim?
Good morning. The directors are being asked to approve a $1 million grant on a $20 million total project to construct and equip a 69,000 square feet addition to Infocon's existing 140,000 square feet facility. This would lead to the creation of 40 jobs. The project was completed back in the fall. Infocon is a leading provider of innovative instrumentation, critical sensor technologies, and advanced process control software. This was a priority project of the regional council, and the company has met its first disbursement milestone and is seeking its funds. It should be noted there is also an additional Excelsior tax credit associated with this project as well. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions from directors for Jim?
No.
Any comments from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Seconded, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Ed Mazinski represents our Finger Lakes region, and he will present the next two items on the agenda. Ed?
Thank you, Howard and the directors, and good morning. The first project, Advanced Atomization Technologies. This is a request for a $500,000 capital grant to Advanced Atomization Technologies, LLC, in Wayne County. These funds come from the Economic Transformation Program, which supports the economies of communities affected by the closure of certain correctional and juvenile detention facilities. In this case, it was the Butler Correctional Facility that nearby that was closed. Advanced Atomization Technologies is a remarkable company, a joint venture of GE Aviation and Parker Hannafin's aviation unit to manufacture advanced fuel nozzles for jet engines. The company has completed construction of a $25,000 square foot, $25,000 square foot addition to its existing facility. The grant filled a financing gap in the $10.7 million project. The company actually considered moving to other states, namely Ohio, Alabama, or Michigan. And the company was also awarded Excelsior tax credit for this project up to $900,000. And the company will retain 317 jobs and create 87 new jobs. That completes my first presentation.
Okay, go on to the second.
Okay, the second one, once again, nut butter. The directors are being asked to approve a $300,000 capital grant to once again Nut Butter Collective Incorporated, a food processor specializing in natural and organic nut butters, such as peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, and seed butter.
What about almond butter? No almond butter? Sorry.
It also produces roasted nuts and a variety of honey products. Its company is in Livingston County and needed a separate peanut-only manufacturing facility to meet growing demand and also to avoid any cross-contamination due to peanut allergies. The company considered California and Oregon, which are close to some major customers. This Regional Council Year 2 award grant filled the financing gap in the $3.5 million project. The company completed construction of a 40,000 square foot facility on a second site nearby, about a half a mile from its original plant, and equipped it with the latest equipment in the nut butter industry. The company will retain 37 jobs and create 53 new jobs, 30 of which it already added. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Who has the courage to challenge the nut butter project? Nobody. Any questions? Joyce, do you have a question on nut butter?
Well, it just reminds me of an old story of an announcer on WEVD, which was the Yiddish language radio station, and the announcer was doing an ad for a new product, mighty fine nut chocolate pudding. And he goes through, ladies and gentlemen, rush out to your store to buy nut chocolate pudding, Mighty Fine's brand new chocolate pudding, etc., etc. And as soon as he gets off the air, a lady calls him on the phone and she says, "Mr. Announcer, what's the pudding?" And he says, "Nut chocolate pudding." She says, "I know it's not chocolate pudding, but is it vanilla, maybe strawberry?"
All right, this has been excellent. Excellent meeting. Any other questions or performances or anything else? All right, that was good. Thank you, Ed. Is there any comments from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve these
Second.
items? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, sir. Let me see, what do we
Thank
have
you.
next?
I have some more in the non-discretionary category.
Okay, well, sorry, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Non-discretionary projects refer to those listed in the New York State budget that enhance the state's communities through cultural, educational, research, development, and civic organizations. These projects originate from the Governor, Assembly, or Senate, and ESD is named to administer the funding. ESD does not select the recipients of funding. This month, there are two projects for your consideration. The first is Senate-sponsored, Griffiths Air Force Base LDC Capital, and this is directly related to the project presented by Simone Bethune. This is located at Griffiths Air Force Base, now known as Griffiths Business Technology Park in Rome, and this is a $500,000 capital grant to be used for construction of roads and other infrastructure and for a portion of a 20,000 square foot building addition to the Griffiths Institute, a technology center and product commercialization center that works with the Air Force's intellectual property arm. And the project totaling $6.7 million will begin shortly and expected to be completed in April of 2017. The second and final project, called the North Country Hub for Innovative Manufacturing Nanotechnology Capital, is executive sponsored. This is a $4,050,000 grant that's being requested to Fort Schuyler Management Corporation on behalf of SUNY Polytechnic's College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering for the planning, design, and engineering costs of a new state-of-the-art facility in Plattsburgh called the North Country Hub for Innovative Manufacturing Nanotechnology. The proposed 170,000 square foot facility will house the U.S. subsidiary of Norsk Titanium, headquartered in Oslo, Norway, and will be their very first presence in the United States. This facility will be the world's first industrial-scale 3D printing manufacturing center. You may have heard of 3D printing in various modes of plastics and things, but this is something revolutionary. This will manufacture titanium parts for the aerospace industry. And this proprietary patented method that North Titanium will develop these parts at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time than casting, which is the conventional way of preparing these. The plant will have a production capacity of over 20 metric tons of titanium parts annually. Only 4.05 million of the 125 million state appropriation specifically for this project is being requested of the directors at this time. After the planning and design phase, including environmental reviews, we will come back to the directors for the balance of the appropriation. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ed, thank you. So these next two items that Ed presented, are there any questions from the directors? Joyce?
Yeah, I have a question about the North Country Hub. I'm glad to hear that this facility is locating there. However, I have some questions about the process for dispersing the grant money, especially given the fact that the agency involved in the dispersion and the administration of the grant is Fort Schuyler, which we know is currently the subject of a number of investigations because of its bidding processes, et cetera, and selection of contracts. So my question pertains to whether, from the project summaries which were given, it just says, it's very general in terms of the role of ESD in oversight of the bidding process. And so I'd like to know what that exactly means, what kind of oversight we exercise, and are there formal guidelines for the bidding process? Are there any requirements for an RFP, where the RFP has to be published, eligibility for the contract, et cetera?
Kevin, I'm gonna sick you on that.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
So, as it relates to the Fort Schuyler project, that project is their processes for awarding the building contracts or the purchase of machinery and equipment is done through their processes, which we at ESD don't have a role. Having said that, we enter into a GDA, not in this particular 4.5, but when we bring back the remainder 121 or so for the actual equipment and structure, where we'll enter a grant disbursement agreement that will set the terms of what is a permissible expenditure. This funding and all of the funding currently going to Fort Schuyler projects are, in addition to our normal review, also under the review of Bart Schwartz and the Guidepost team. So any funds that leave ESD, before any funds leave ESD for these projects, Bart Schwartz and his team will approve and authorize that expenditure. At the same time, they're working closely with the Fort Schuyler folks on their processes for engaging these, making sure all of those processes, and they will approve each step in that process on their end.
So Bart Schwartz has a fiduciary responsibility and a legal responsibility here for the integrity of the process?
I wouldn't say that.
Because my understanding is that there might be some question about what their level of responsibility is and their...
They? Who you refer to as they?
Bart Schwartz.
I think it's another level of review and, before it gets to ESD. And, what we have here is some projects that have been approved in the state budget. Funding for these have been approved in the state budget, and given some of the, some of the inquiry around this, some of these have taken longer than they might otherwise have. And so, the companies and the state's initiative to make investments in these, pivotal industries, I think we're kind of at an inflection point, and it's important, I think, that we, try to move it forward and, kind of clear up some of the bottlenecks. So we were comfortable enough to bring it forward because it's in the budget, it's matches with our strategic plans. It's gone through additional layers of review through Bart Schwartz and guideposts, and so we think that this is like the prudent time to act on it.
And those reviews will continue throughout the disbursement of all of these funds. There, I can't speak to their relationship, but I know they're working closely with the team at Fort Schuyler on the steps you're asking about in terms of entering into contracts, enter into agreements. What are the process? I know they're doing that. I'm not part of those discussions, but I have discussions with all those folks on a daily basis. We have let them know we're going to move this item. They have said, "Great, move forward." But before you disperse any money, we're going to want to take another look, and we will work cooperatively with them and Fort Schuyler to ensure that all of those funds are allocated appropriately and consistent with the grant disbursement agreement.
And I want to say that going back to the way this whole meeting started with the auditor's review of ESD's processes, and the fact that they didn't even take not only. They didn't take a representative sample, they looked at every single disbursement that came through ESD that was connected to this organization, and have given you a, unequivocal vote of confidence and an audit opinion on that. So again, I think the role of ESD throughout these years continues to be, very professional and appropriate. And I just think it's, we have to be careful not to mix up what's really being, looked at here. We've always done this thoroughly, professionally, and appropriately. That is again reflected in the audit this year, having looked at every single disbursement by an outside auditing firm. So, we advance it with that history and confidence and in the desire to try and advance these important projects. Yes, Liz?
I would just note with respect to the auditor's findings that they found that we followed all of our procedures, to the letter with respect to all of these disbursements. But additionally, we asked them, do they recommend any changes to our practices? And they had no changes to recommend. They did not identify any risks that we haven't addressed through our own procedures.
Well, what concerns me here is that the boilerplate language, which we see, is vague on the subject, and so I was wondering if there was anything in addition from the agency or internally to the agency regarding the disbursement of the funds, how the bidding process is conducted, and then the conditions for payment. Because frankly, my understanding of the auditing process, and I could be wrong because I'm not an auditor, and I hope I never will be, but that if our processes or our requirements or statute doesn't require any more oversight than the fact that we write the check, they get the money, then we've fulfilled our responsibility, etc. And from the way this description is written, it looks pretty much like that's our role here, is that the money is in the budget. I'm not quarreling with that. It's a wonderful project. It's a great concept. But my concern is more with the process itself, especially given the process, the history of the entity which is going to be receiving the money and will be overseeing the project, the contract, the bidding process, etc. And from what I'm understanding is that essentially ESD has no obligations in that respect.
Obligations
for establishing guidelines for the bidding process, for overseeing the bidding or reviewing the bidding.
No, we don't.
Okay, that's okay. So we have no liability in that respect, I would guess. No, I can't ask you for a legal question, a legal opinion off the top of your head, but I'm just sort of trying to think through.
I mean, we're,
what
we are,
our,
our role has been, we're reviewing the requests for payment, right, to make sure that the payments that are, you know, that are made here are consistent with what the project required. So we are validating that we are paying for things that are properly billed and work properly performed. And,
because, well, the
but
language.
we're not running, you know,
Yeah.
we're not being Fort Schuyler. They're being Fort Schuyler. So we're not doing their job as such, but we are doing our job in the, you know, we have a role to play, and I think we've been playing that role, you know.
And we have
Clearly,
no
the
response.
government recognizes that concern is there, and that's why the Bart Schwartz team has been made part of this
Inserted
process.
into the process,
I mean,
yeah.
they're very, I talk to them on a daily basis. I know they talk to Fort Schuyler even on a more regular basis. They're doing their due diligence, they're working very closely on those steps in the process to make sure those are done right. We're making sure that the funding, as agreed to, as you will or will not approve, is spent in a manner absolutely consistent and appropriate with those guidelines. And I'm very confident we're doing those really well. We've got a great team here who takes their jobs very seriously, and I'm very confident about how we're doing and what we're doing.
Because I'll note that in the boilerplate, it says that payment will be made upon presentation to ESD of an invoice and such other documentation as ESD may reasonably require. So obviously, it's not just the presentation of an invoice, but ESD can ask for further documentation.
Right.
The second
does.
the second question, is there any assurance that we have, there's a total of, I believe, 120, this is only $4 million out of $125 million that are available for this project. So are there any provisions regarding cost overruns, assurance that the contract conforms to the original RFP and to the original purpose, and is not expanded in some way that would greatly increase it and require further funds?
Within the constraints of our agreement with Fort Schuyler, at this point, it will be the $4.05 million. If there are costs that are exceeding that, they will not be borne by ESD. Within the broader project, the $125 million is the total commitment to the project for Empire State Development. Should there be?
If the amount spent should exceed the $4.05 million, if for some way, and this isn't a construction project, but if for some reason the responsibilities of the selected contractor expands beyond what's originally anticipated and requires more than $4 million, that would then come back to the board?
I don't just.
Because we're only approving $4 million right now.
Yeah.
Any additional requests beyond that, yes, would have to come back to the board for authorization.
So we would at that point have the opportunity to look into what happened and why this is necessary, et cetera. Okay.
Sure, yeah. Any changes, material changes to this, to the agreement that will be in place for this $4 million, will have to come back to the board for, a vote.
Okay,
And then the remaining 121 will also be coming to the board.
right.
I would imagine because they're engaged with this $4 million in the seeker, in the soft cost sort of work in the planning, they haven't engaged in any of those
Right, I mean, it's
RFPs or-
unlikely, given the way construction, this kind of a project works, that stage in the process is not where the problems start to develop.
And generally,
They develop later on in the project.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from directors on these items? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion to approve it?
Move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Carried. Kevin Hansen is up, and he'll present 2 items, and I guess we're going to vote after each item, Kevin, so.
Good morning. This board item is to request a series of approvals from the directors in connection with the approval of a general project plan, or GPP, for the Women's Building Civic and Land Use Improvement Project, which should also be included in the director materials. The subject of this GPP and the site for the project is the Bayview Correctional Facility, a former women's prison in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan, located at the corner of West 20th Street and 11th Avenue. Since Governor Cuomo first entered office, New York State has taken extraordinary steps to close costly, underutilized facilities throughout the state and save hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars. As it relates to correctional facilities, these closures are enabled by the substantial drops in state crime rates and drug offenses, the declines of which have caused the state's inmate population to shrink dramatically, reducing the need to keep facilities like Bayview open. In connection with these trends, and in conjunction with damage that Bayview sustained during Hurricane Sandy, Bayview was formally decommissioned in 2013 as part of the state budget. After the state's decision to close Bayview, ESD staff studied the site and met with representatives of the Chelsea community to listen to their input and to learn about their priorities for the site's future. Based on that input, and based on a study of the site itself, ESD then issued a request for proposals in May 2014 that honored many of these priorities and asked interested developers to submit design concepts and financial offers for the right to redevelop the site under a sale or long-term lease. Some of the community priorities reflected in the RFP included prohibiting complete demolition of the entire site, with a preference for preserving and/or adaptively reusing the site, restricting residential uses in favor of commercial, community facility, and other uses, and encouraging developers to meet various development goals such as sustainable design, meaningful participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises, and achieving architectural distinction in design excellence. Through its marketing efforts, ESD received an outpouring of interest in Bayview, with several dozen firms touring the facility and 11 teams submitting responses to the RFP. On April 6, 2015, after a rigorous selection process, ESD selected and signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Novo Foundation, a New York-based organization that dedicates itself to advancing several issues, including women's progress. Of note, Novo Foundation is chaired by Peter and Jennifer Buffett, son and daughter-in-law of investor and philanthropist Warren Buffett. The Gorin Group, a women-owned development firm led by Leela Gorin, has partnered with Novo Foundation in the development of the project. As for the project itself, the winning proposal submitted by Novo was to transform Bayview, a place that was once home to many of the worst things that had gone wrong in women's lives, into what will be called the Women's Building, a new unified home for leading advocates and nonprofit groups to work together in their shared pursuit of the advancement of women's rights globally. In total, the Women's Building will include about 130,000 square feet of space, which will be mostly filled by dedicated office space for women-focused nonprofits, a number of community facilities, including a gym wellness center, childcare facility, and women's health clinic, and limited office space for for-profit tenants whose rents may subsidize the rents of the nonprofits and whose businesses may support nonprofits' needs. As for the site itself, as described further in the GPP, Bayview is a 0.4-acre, 15,800 square foot lot with 2 building sections, an 8-story main building, and a 6-story laundry facility. Under the GPP, Novo will be required to rehabilitate the main building and to replace the laundry facility with a new, approximately 16-story, 65,000 gross square foot building. Of note, Bayview has determined to be eligible for listing on the state and national registers of historic places. Accordingly, as further specified in the GPP, the project will be implemented in conformity with an agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office. To carry out the project, Novo or its affiliate will enter into a long-term lease of the site, inclusive of land and improvements, for up to 99 years with ESD as landlord, in order to develop and operate Bayview as the Women's Building. In exchange for the right to develop the Women's Building, Nova will be paying for, among others, all of ESD's transaction costs, all demolition, renovation, and construction costs of the project, and annual rent payments that will begin at $3.5 million per year and escalate over 99 years, beginning with an immediate prepayment to ESD of $5.8 million at lease execution. This long-term lease transaction structure, as opposed to a traditional sale, will generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues for the state over time and will return to the site to the state's control at the end of its lease term. Ultimately, the directors are being asked to take several actions. First, to adopt land use improvement project and civic project findings pursuant to Section 10 of the UDC Act, as outlined in the materials. 2, adopt the proposed GPP. 3, authorize a public hearing on the proposed GPP and the essential terms of the transaction with Novo Foundation pursuant to the UDC Act. 4, make a determination of no significant effect on the environment. And finally, to authorize all related actions. Following the board's approvals at this meeting and appropriate public notice, ESD staff will conduct a public hearing and ultimately expects to request final project approval from the Public Authorities Control Board.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the directors on this first item? I think we have some comment maybe from the public. If they're here, maybe one or two folks would like to make a comment on this project. So why don't you come up and introduce yourself? And
I am an interested party. I'm Tatiana Eck. I represent Gorin Group. We're the developer with Novo of the project. And it's an absolute delight to be presenting a development project like this. It's very unusual. We've had a very robust community engagement process along the way. Over the last year, we've engaged with over 300 people in the women's movement organization and the neighborhood. We've met with Community Board 4 or 5 times. I'm presenting again to them on Monday, and they're all very positive about the project. We are, as Kevin has described, transitioning this former prison to a place of real hope and aspiration and work for women's rights organizations. I brought with me a colleague, Jaya Vasandani, with the Women and Justice Project, who's done a lot of work with formerly incarcerated women. We just finished an international design competition to identify a fantastic woman architect for the project. We'll be announcing that in early July. And we have had formerly incarcerated women involved at every stage of the process. We had one fantastic woman on our architect selection committee. We have 4 on our advisory circle who is meeting next week. And it's just a fantastic project, and we're delighted to be working with ESD and with all these community groups. And Jaya, I'll let you say a little bit about the work that you've been doing with us.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Jaya Vasandani. I'm the co-director of the Women and Justice Project. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending mass incarceration and mass criminalization of women in the United States. And as Tatiana mentioned, we've been engaged in an aspect of the broad community consultation process that NOVA has been doing with various stakeholders from the women's and girls' rights movement and the Chelsea community. And part of the reason for the community consultation is really to guide the process of transforming this space that was really a site of brutality and dehumanization of some of the most marginalized women in our society to a place that is really about hope and transformation and opportunity. So we've been honored to play that role, and Novo has engaged the Women and Justice Project to engage directly impacted women, meaning women who've been impacted by incarceration, either currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated at Bayview itself, to gather their input and ideas for change, and really centering the experiences and expertise of directly impacted women throughout the creation of the building, and also once the building opens, is important for a number of reasons. Probably not a surprise to most people in this room, directly impacted women bear some of the most profound through marginalization and degradation of our society because of forces like racism and gender oppression and economic inequity. The vast majority of women who are incarcerated in New York State come from low-income communities and communities of color. Vast majority of women in prison in New York and across the country are moms, often of young children. They were often the primary caregivers of those children before their incarceration. 90% are survivors of severe physical or sexual violence as children or as adults. And most women in prison are there for issues that are directly related to poverty, addiction, mental illness, domestic violence, and trauma. So it's really incredible that the Nova Foundation has really centered that experience and that expertise of women.
Just interrupt you for a quick second.
Sure.
I will say that one of the other goals that we're pursuing for this project is to exceed the requirements for women and minority on this project, and we're setting targets of 30 to 35% on this, and we are writing them into our contracts. And it's a real opportunity to help some of these women from all kinds of challenged backgrounds to actually get a full-time paying job equal to man's pay that is a career and a way for single women to also support their families. So we've been talking with Hudson Guild, we've been talking to neighborhood organizations and broader New York City and state organizations to help recruit women to actually work on the project and also be part of the whole opportunity process.
So just in closing, to say that because of the building's history as a former prison, it really has a unique opportunity, both during its creation and after the doors open, to play a role in really educating the public about our nation's problem of mass incarceration, but also creating opportunities for employment, wellness, and successful reentry for women coming home from incarceration, and really having a ripple effect on communities and women and families, children of those women coming home from prison. And we've had just overwhelming enthusiasm from the women that we have engaged about this process and about the transformation of the building, which is really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick question, if I might. It wasn't clear from the reading of it, but that the programming and the services that will come out of the women's building are focused only on formerly incarcerated women?
No, they're not. They're focused against all aspects of nonprofits. We're still working to identify who the tenants will be in the building and what that model will be, whether they'll be members of the building or actual leaseholding members. That's something that, we're the developer and we're working with Novo on the actual mission for the
But it will
tenants.
not be limited to formerly incarcerated?
No, it will not. No.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your comment, and I can think with some confidence say on behalf of the board that we're very pleased to be partnering with both of you and your respective organizations. And I want to recognize really our ESD whole property group is a perfect example of how we take surplus slash dormant properties and help put them back to very productive use. So it's a win-win-win here, and great to be working with you on this. Assuming the board passes, this could be very contentious, we'll see. Okay, was that your first or second item, Kevin? Okay, so we're gonna vote on it. Is there any other comments from the public? All right, is there a motion to approve this item? Thank you. Is there a second? Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you and congratulations, great.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, back to you.
Thank you, Howard. All right, the next item is an up to 3-year contract for ESD to hire a military base consultant that will represent and advise ESD on how to retain and increase the economic impact of the numerous military bases that are located in the state. So for background, as you may know, military bases are major economic and job contributors within the state. They account for 58,000 full and part-time jobs, and they provide $2.2 billion of wages and salaries to employees. However, the economic impact of these military bases continues to face the threat, as with many states, of federal defense spending cuts and potentially even future rounds of military base closures. As such, in order to retain and increase the substantial economic impacts of its military bases, New York State seeks assistance from a military base consultant for activities such as tracking and advising on all relevant defense policy making and legislation, managing communications with and arranging base tours for high-level military officials, congressional staff, and other stakeholders, and strategically in assessing and improving conditions across the state's military bases in order to best position them against being selected for further spending cuts or force adjustments and toward their selection for new missions and opportunities. The recommended firm for this contract is Baker, Donaldson, Bierman, Caldwell, and Berkowitz, or simply Baker Donaldson. Baker Donaldson's military-based public policy team possesses long-standing expertise, experience, and relationships in military and federal affairs, including with particular respect to military-based funding and force structure decisions. Baker Donaldson was selected for this contract as the lone respondent to the RFP issued by ESD on May 2nd. ESD is confident in the ability of Baker Donaldson to represent ESD in the state based on its history of exemplary work with the state since 2013, when it won a prior RFP after being voted as both the most qualified and lowest cost respondent. Due in part to Baker Donaldson's services, as an example, when, in July 2015, the U.S. Army announced a plan to reduce the size of its force by 40,000 soldiers, a reduction in force for Fort Drum in New York was proposed for only 28 soldiers. This compared with an average loss of 650 soldiers across other Army installations. In terms of its fee, the initial monthly rate under this contract is $25,000, which represents a reduction of nearly 17% from the most recent monthly base fee under the prior RFP response. And in total, the amount of funds that we are requesting, inclusive of a 10% contingency, is not to exceed $993,465, which is to be distributed over one base year and potentially two options at ESD's discretion, as further outlined in the materials.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions from the directors on this item? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, second. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approved. Thank you so much. Thanks, Kevin, for that. It's my pleasure to introduce a vital member of the Western New York ESD team. He's also been key to the whole revitalization of Western New York, and he's an amazing member of the legal team here, working with Liz Fine and her team. One of my favorite all-time people, Steve Gawley.
Wow. What do you want, Howard?
I want a raise.
Thank you. This is going to be very easy. We're asking the board to approve a one-year contract with UBRI. It's actually the Research Foundation on behalf of SUNY Buffalo. Laura was sitting here. It's her group, her contract, to continue that work. They've, as you've heard from Howard and Chris, they were instrumental in creating the billion plan, and they're continuing the implementation. They've been on an implementation for 3 years. We did an RFP. They were the only respondents. Not we kind of expected that. And so we're asking the board to approve a contract, annual contract up to $750,000. And
Just so I understand, I know what they did. What are they going to be doing for the?
they are continuing implementation. So working on projects. Yes.
The Upstate Revitalization Initiative?
No, that's separate. This is the Buffalo Billion. This
Oh, the
is
Buffalo
for the
Billion.
Buffalo
Okay,
Billion.
I got
So that presentation you saw,
Yes,
I
know the Buffalo Billion.
Yep. So 700. No, all the work they did. But so it's 1 year, and we have ESD as the option to renew it for an additional year after that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any questions from the directors on this item? Any comment from the public on this item? Is there a motion to approve?
So
Thank
moved.
you. Seconded?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, Steve. Benson is now going to present an item relating to the reexamination and readoption of ESD's mission statement and related performance measures. Benson.
Thank you, Howard. Good morning. The directors are requested to confirm their reexamination of ESD's mission statement and performance measures and readopt the mission statement and performance measures without amendments. By way of background, this reexamination ensures that ESD complies with its obligations under New York State Public Authorities Law, Section 2824-A, in a timely manner. Please note, however, that the board can reexamine and amend ESD's mission statement and performance measures at any time during the year, if necessary. The directors were provided the mission statement and performance measures in their board materials. Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this item? Yes, Joyce?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that the governance committee has in fact reviewed these, and we've had considerable discussion about it, and that I will be voting in favor of this resolution, with the understanding that we will be continuing to review this in the near future, with an eye to making changes perhaps in the mission statement and or in the performance measures.
Okay, so noted. Any other questions from directors? Any comments from the public? Motion to approve?
So,
Thank you.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carried. Thank you. Brendan Healy will present the fiscal year 2015-2016 performance measurement report for the directors. Brendan?
Thank you. So I have to piggyback off of Betsy's presentation. In accordance with the Public Authorities Law, every year ESD is required to create a performance measure report that is consistent with ESD's mission statement and performance measurements. Today, the directors are requested to accept the fiscal year 2015-2016 performance measure report in accordance with the Public Authorities Law. Using the performance report measurements that are listed in your materials, the attached report, which was put together by Sharice Liggins of Loans and Grants, along with input from myself, Edwin Lee, a few other folks, including Kevin Hansen and Kevin Eunice. The report shows ESD approvals for loans and grants during fiscal year 2015-2016. And as you can see from the data in your report, we had another busy year. There are three charts specifically in your materials, the last 2 pages of your materials, to characterize the loan and grant approvals during last fiscal year. The first chart summarizes loan and grant approvals broken down by program. The second chart summarizes loan and grant approvals sorted by region. And then the third chart summarizes loan and grant approvals sorted by industry. To give a high-level summary, a total of 317 companies or organizations were assisted with loan and grant approvals during last fiscal year. As a result of this assistance, a total of approximately $4.1 billion of total investment will be made in New York State. That figure includes ESD grant and loan investments totaling approximately $981 million, as well as public investment of $421 million and private investment of approximately $2.7 billion. This assistance, in addition, is anticipated to retain 20,685 jobs, as well as create a minimum of 10,387 jobs. So to summarize, we're looking for the directors to accept the fiscal year 2015-2016 performance measures report in accordance with the Public Authorities Law. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. Any questions or comment from the directors? Anyone? The only thing I'll say is, we, I think through the course of these many board meetings have sort of represented and really shown the amazing work that ESD does, and the specific numbers don't really capture the full essence, I think, of the strategic role and the leadership role ESD plays in every region across the state. And it's almost impossible in a sort of a brief report to capture the impact of ESD. But if you think about all these regional presentations, including today's, and realize that ESD really has played the lead role in all of these strategic plans and advancing initiatives across every industry sector and every region of the state, not to mention the role we play in infrastructure projects and adaptive reuse of these buildings. I think there's a lot to be proud of here, and I think it's fair to say, Brendan, it's almost impossible to sort of capture the full impact of ESD across the state, but your report does a good job of capturing it numerically. So, any other comments?
Can I just make a comment based on what you just said? I look at the mission statement, and I know I'm brand new to the process here, but it doesn't reference the fact that what the Empire State Development does goes beyond investing in business and job creation. It really tries to improve the lives and create opportunity for everybody in our state. And we are suddenly find ourselves at a time in which much political discussion goes to the fact about that not everybody is prospering from business, generally from Wall Street.
Yep.
And I would hope that at some time, I know that Joyce referenced the fact that we would be re-examining our mission statement and performance measures, that we begin to think about some way of incorporating that philosophy into our mission statement and our performance measures.
No, I think you're right, and to Joyce's point as well, I mean, the mission of the agency through these regional councils and this whole process over 5 years, I think, has grown, to your point, and broadened. And I think we accomplish more than we even identify in the reports and in the mission. So that's, we had this conversation in our governance committee, and we committed to continuing that conversation to kind of update the mission to kind of catch up to the reality of all the many initiatives, objectives, and impacts that I think ESD is having. So we will continue to have that conversation in the near future. Any comments from the public on this item? Okay, is there a motion to approve? Great, is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you so much. Christine Kostopoulos will present us with an item relating to the New York State Electric Generation Facility Cessation Mitigation Program. Christine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. This request is for program authorization, adoption of guidelines, and authorization to take related action for the Electric Generation Facility Cessation Mitigation Program. This program will provide grants to municipalities, including school districts and special districts, that have realized a loss in property tax revenues due to the closure of an electric generating facility within its boundaries. Eligibility for a grant depends on confirmation of permanent closure of a facility, which will be confirmed to us by the Department of Public Service, and a property tax reduction of 20% or greater for the closed facility. Property tax reductions, which we call the tax loss, will be confirmed by the Department of Tax and Finance or an IDA in the event a facility pays through a pilot agreement. Municipalities are eligible for grants for up to 5 years, and are eligible for up to 80% of the tax loss they realize due to the closure. The grant amount over the 5 years decreases by 15% in each subsequent year, and the municipality has to maintain a greater than 20% tax loss in order to be eligible in years 2 through 5 also. The legislation directs NYSERDA to contribute $30 million to UDC for program funding. Upon approval of these guidelines, ESD will prepare an application and finalize it, and will be ready to accept applications from municipalities. Awards of less than $250,000 will be handled administratively. Awards of greater than $250,000 will be brought to the board for approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, yes, Joyce, questions for Christine?
Yeah, 2 questions. One is, it's not clear, are ESD funds involved, or is this just NYSERDA? I'm sorry, is this just NYSERDA funds or ESD funds involved? So is the total 30 million or 60 million?
It's a total of $30 million, and they're just NYSERDA funds.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, why is this a problem? I mean, what is causing this closing of facilities?
Well, these facilities exist. They're typically fossil fuel facilities, so they are contribute to air pollution at an enormous rate, and they're also heavily taxed. And so closure of the facilities reduces their tax burden, which affects the municipality to receive the property taxes from these facilities. So it's an attempt to ease the municipalities into, over the next 5 years that have suffered tax losses due to the closures.
Okay, so I appreciate that, but is this part of some sort of larger NYSERDA or energy program in the state that involves a movement towards alternative energy and away from fossil fuels?
I don't know if it's part of a larger program. This was a separate piece of legislation.
This is just something that's happening, and therefore we're
It's an appropriation that was
doing something to help out the localities.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the market for energy has been volatile and has come down quite a bit, and the viability of some of these legacy, fossil fuel plants is challenged, let's put it that way. Any other questions for Christine? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, I know this is we're 2 hours in and we're losing it, but we're refocusing. And we're in like the home stretch. Okay, Tawanda Mitchell will present us with the next two items which relate to the fourth quarter and annual reports on utilization of certified minority and women-owned businesses and procurement commitments to MWBEs. These two items are being presented for the director's information only, and no vote will be required. Tawanda.
Thanks, Howard. I'll start with the quarterly report and begin with utilization. For the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2015 through 2016, ESD achieved MWBE participation in agency projects and procurements totaling 60.38%. During the quarter, ESD dispersed a total of $128.64 million in eligible procurements to vendors, grantees, and borrowers. Of the eligible procurements, $77.67 million in payments were reported to MWBEs. This is due to a significant amount of utilization received at the end of the fiscal year and larger projects, and also accounts for previous advances earlier in the year. With respect to initial commitments to certify MWBEs, for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 15-16, ESD and its subsidiaries executed a total of $4.98 million in procurements and amendments, of which $4.90 million were MWBE eligible procurements. Of the eligible procurements, $1.48 million, or 30.35%, was committed to MWBEs by ESD, its subsidiaries, and primes. I'll conclude with the annual report and begin with disbursements on pre-2015-2016 procurements and amendments. During the fiscal year 2015 through 2016, ESD's total disbursements were $773.3 million. Approximately $170.86 million of that amount was directly related to procurements and amendments executed on or prior to March 31st, 2015. Utilization for certified MWBEs of ESD's total disbursements during FY 15 through 16, approximately $239.1 million was reportedly paid to MWBE firms during the above fiscal year. ESD achieved MWBE participation of 30.93% during the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2016. The MWBE agency goal was 30% for the fiscal year. During 2014 through 15, the agency dispersed $640.92 million and achieved MWBE participation of 19.2%. The previous MWBE agency goal was 23%. Finally, initial commitments to certify MWBEs. For fiscal year 15 and 16, ESD and its subsidiaries executed a total of $154.83 million in procurements and amendments, of which $152.89 million were MWB eligible procurements. Of the eligible procurements, ESD and its subsidiaries and prime vendors committed $37.8 million, or 24.78% to MWB firms. Thank you.
Any questions for Tawanda on the NWBE report? Okay, thanks, Tawanda. No vote is necessary. I need a motion to, let me see, go into executive session. Yeah.
Just note that the items 16, 60 were presented for information only, not these two, but there are two additional ones that were just given to you for information.
Okay, so let me go back and find that exactly. Items 6C and 6D on today's agenda are provided for the director's information only, and no presentation on those items will be given. Okay, so can I have a motion to conduct an executive session pursuant to paragraph D of the section 105 of the New York State Open Meetings Law, during which we'll discuss an amendment to a retained agreement for counsel. Is there a motion to go into an executive session? Is there a second? Thank you. We are in executive session.
Can we stand up?
Right? Let me know when you guys are back online, okay? You're back online, okay? We're back in open session. No votes were taken during the, I would note for the record, no votes were taken during the executive session. Now may I have a motion to approve item 7A as presented and considered in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Carried. There is no further business. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Second. We are
Second.
adjourned. Thank you all.